The president highlighting his positive changes along the southern border.
It comes as the administration clarifies its plan to handle the influx of migrants crossing into the U.S.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington. He has compiled a report with all this news, and he joins us now. Hey there.
Good morning. A lot of news, Steve Ainsley and Brian. Acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan yesterday was clarifying that they're reversing course on a plan to ship migrants from Texas to southern Florida and Buffalo to be processed because it wasn't, quote, an effective use of resources, noting that smaller communities like those would not be ready to receive this kind of overwhelming volume that they're seeing. But officials confirmed that they are sending them from Texas to San Diego currently. All this, as President Trump says, progress is being made in the overall border battle.
The wall is being built as we speak. We'll have close to 500 miles done by the end of next year. And we're changing laws as rapidly as we can get them through the courts. We're fighting a court system. We're fighting the Democrats. I think there's tremendous pressure on many of the Democrats to get something passed.
But one of the 2020 hopefuls, Kirsten Gillibrand, was blasting the president's immigration plan and suggesting we shouldn't be detaining migrants arrested at the border in the first place.
As president of the United States, I wouldn't use the detention system at all. If they're given a lawyer and given a process, they will follow it. They can go into the community.
This, as the chief of the Border Patrol tweets, for the safety of those in our custody and our agents, we've had to release 40,000 into the communities as a last resort. Guys, this news has gotten a lot of text to my phone this morning. Border Patrol officials tell me that one of their greatest fears is that this situation becomes so bad that they're forced to release single adult males into communities across the country. They're calling that a game changer.
Hey, so, Griff, it's okay. They don't care about what's happening at the border unless, of course, those people end up in their states, in their towns, in their communities.
Well, listen, the smaller communities have fewer resources, and that's what McAleenan was pointing out. But the overall chiefs that are really putting their heads together, trying to come up with a way to deal with this massive influx, while they hope Congress will solve the laws that are driving people here, they know one thing, Brian, and that's this. If single adult males begin to be released at will across this country, it will increase the number that keep coming, and already they can't deal with this surge.
Kirsten Gillibrand says do it. Release everybody.
Yeah, you just get them a lawyer. That'll be great. We'll just put a bunch of people in three-piece suits down at the border. It'll be fantastic. Hey, Griff, what is the attitude amongst the Border Patrol right now? Is there a fear of mass quitting?
There is a very big concern with morale. That isn't something I want to report with quotes, but I have been talking to these folks because I deal with this issue almost daily, Brian. And I will tell you this, they're truly at their wits' end. There's nothing manufactured about the stress of these agents who have, many of them, dedicated their lives to protecting the border, that now see what is an increase in numbers that they've never dealt with in their professional lives, and they don't know what they're going to do next. Right. That's the snapshot we got, where they're not going to fly these apprehended migrants now to Florida because they're such small stations, but they are sending them to San Diego because it's much larger. One thing's for sure, they're going to have to find some solution because it's not getting better.
Absolutely. And Griff, regarding the morale, wouldn't you say, and we have found in speaking to the Border Patrol agents we have, that their frustration is with Congress. Yep. They just want Congress to change the laws. You know, they're doing their job. They're happy to do their job on the border. It's the fact that Congress will not change the laws to make their job easier and the country safer.
One patrol chief told me recently, I don't need another politician to come down here to see the problem we've already shown them. I need them to fix things in Washington.
Yeah. Right, and the framework was laid out by Lindsey Graham, and that would work.
Well, we'll see. I don't know about that. I couldn't speak to that, but I will tell you this. One thing is those Border Patrol agents are really crossing their fingers and hoping that they'll get busy in the Capitol behind me to get something done, because that magnet, that draw, is definitely not being diminished in any way.
Well, and the president said over the weekend the country is full. All right, Griff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Griff.
So there you've got some of Kirsten Gillibrand's comments. She will actually be the subject of the next Fox News town hall 2 weeks from, I believe, yesterday, hosted by, once again, Chris Wallace. Last night, Chris was up in New Hampshire with millennial mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg. If you saw it, it was an interesting hour. The mayor was smooth. He was thoughtful. He was at times funny. and he is very progressive. Listen.
The tweets are, I don't care. Well, it's a very effective way to command the attention of the media. It is the nature of grotesque things that you can't look away. If we make it less about him and more about you, paradoxically, I think that's actually the best way to defeat him. They have fairer, which means higher, marginal income tax rate on those earning the most, perhaps a financial transactions tax, also closing the corporate tax loopholes. But when it comes to the general election, at risk of sounding simplistic, I think the right thing to do is just to have everybody's vote count the same. Look, states don't vote, people do. I believe that the right of a woman to make her own decisions is a national right. We've gotten away from the fundamental question of who gets to draw the line. And I trust women to draw the line when it's their own life.
You know, like you said, he is very measured. He knows how to answer these questions. He's a politician. But if you're going to go to the polls and vote for him, you've got to know where he stands on these issues. He's extremely progressive, wants to get rid of the Electoral College.
Right.
In New Hampshire, which would diminish their effectiveness.
But he also
but the people clapped loudly when he said that.
Well, because they're all his friends. I think he's related to the whole audience. Number two, don't hop on our channel and continue to put down the other hosts on the channel or the channel. If you feel that negative about it, don't come. Because for him to go out there and take shots of our primetime lineup without going on our primetime lineup shows, to me, absolutely no courage.
Right,
Number three, the other thing that's flat out wrong is that the tax cuts were for the rich. They weren't. The biggest cuts were corporate taxes to make us more competitive around the world, and they have worked. So the smallest tax cut was for those who pay the most. The rest was, if you just look at the Washington Post fact check, it shows that he's wrong about that.
Well, he was asked about the deficit, and he said he favors 4 tax hikes. One would be for higher marginal income tax. The second would be some sort of a reasonable wealth tax. He did not specify what that was. A financial transaction tax, going after the people who are making the money by making money in the stock market, et cetera. And the fourth is closing corporate tax loopholes.
Not a word about spending.
The question was about deficit.
Yeah, but that's the only way to get the deficit down is to cut down spending, and he wouldn't take the courageous step to do that. Meanwhile, go ahead.
He was very measured when he answers questions in a very thoughtful way. Like when they asked him about taking down the memorials, certain memorials like Jefferson, Washington, and he answered. He said, "Look, if you watch some of these networks, they want to say that I'm going to basically go down and remove the the Lincoln Memorial." And he said, "I'm not saying that." Wasn't the Lincoln Memorial he was talking about?
No, he was talking about
Jefferson. The Jefferson. He said, "I'm not saying I want to go and remove that one." He said, "But I would like to rename some of these streets, maybe after people that African Americans."
And here's the danger of this, Ainsley. So you say Thomas Jefferson no longer is worthy of having a Jefferson-Jackson dinner. Okay. Well, what about Barack Obama? Barack Obama, we love him. Well, did you love him in 2008 when he says marriage between a man and a woman? Did he show intolerance then? Because in 2012, he said same-sex marriage is fine. Was he not worthy in 2008, and is he worthy in 2012? We're an impossible scale to what he is talking about is instead of saluting our founding fathers, begin to diminish their importance. Well, we wouldn't be a country without that.
He took aim at a couple of news outlets, I think Fox and the New York Times as well, because in his original comments with Hugh Hewitt, he was asked about removing the names from the annual Jefferson-Jackson dinner. That was where they started. And then eventually, he went on to say he didn't want Jefferson's name entirely stripped from the public square, but instead honorary titles, for instance, those Democratic dinners. He said last night that that's what he was talking about. So we just gave him the opportunity to clarify.
We just clarified at 6:50. We just had both comments on.
All right, Jillian has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
And that's right. Good morning. Following a number of stories, and we start with a Fox News alert. An urgent manhunt intensifying after a shootout leaves one officer dead and 2 others hurt in Alabama. Listen to these chilling calls for help.
Right shoulder. 215. I'm hit. Right on your body. Arm.
Police say Grady Wilkes opened fire as officers responded to a domestic disturbance call at a trailer park in Auburn. He was last seen wearing body armor and is considered armed and dangerous. The Auburn officer is the 18th shot and killed in the line of duty this year. Only provoke war if you're prepared to be destroyed. That's the strong warning from President Trump to Iran.
I want to invade if I have to. I'm not somebody that wants to go into war. because war hurts economies, war kills people, most importantly. I don't want to fight. But you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
The president doubling down on Twitter saying, quote, if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. The warnings come as a rocket lands less than a mile from the U.S. embassy in nearby Baghdad. Iraqi officials believe Iranian-backed militias could be responsible. President Trump is expected to officially kick off his bid for a second term next month. Axios reporting that the president will formally launch his re-election campaign around June 16th. That would be 4 years to the day the president came down a Trump Tower escalator to announce his plans to run back in 2015. Tim Tebow hitting a major milestone in his minor league baseball career.
Now here's Tim Tebow. First pitch, fastball lift in the air. High and deep to right. Barnes is back. Warning track at the wall. Goodbye. Home run, Tim Tebow.
Well, Tebow hitting his first AAA home run with the Syracuse Mets. His teammates giving him the silent treatment in the dugout before, of course, celebrating the big home run. But it wasn't enough because Syracuse lost the game 8-2. But there you can see the celebration.
Right. So that was it. He got in, no one reacted, silent treatment.
So that's like a joke
here.
Only a homer.
Yeah.
It's a tradition. It's a joke. Like, we're ignoring you because you just did a great job.
Yeah.
All right.
Good for him.
Next stop, the major leagues, maybe in September.
Congratulations, Tim Tebow.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, as the crisis at our border continues, Sarah Carter went to Guatemala to investigate where it begins. She will join us live with how the cartels and human traffickers are luring migrants to America in just a moment. All right, the numbers are staggering. U.S. Border Patrol apprehending more than 500,000 illegal immigrants since October. 4,000 a day. So how exactly are they getting here? Our next guest just got back from Guatemala and saw firsthand how the cartels and human traffickers are manipulating the crisis and luring the migrants and their children here. Investigative journalist and Fox News contributor Sarah Carter joins us now. Sarah, so you went down to the eye of the storm in Guatemala. What'd you see?
Yeah, good morning, Brian. It was incredible. I was able to get into some of the villages outside of Guatemala City. They're basically abandoned. I was talking to people in some of these villages that said more than 60% of Santa Rosa de Lima, the residents, the original residents, have actually fled with traffickers, human traffickers, drug cartels to the United States. They've been promising them that they would get entry and using our own broken system to get in. A lot of children have been missing. Some of the children are being rented. They're being used over and over again to get people into the country. So it's a really horrible situation. If we could go to a soundbite, there's a gentleman that talks about it. His name is Bran, and he basically discusses how dangerous this situation actually is.
Now big problems. More money and more problems. The people say, give me money. If you don't give the money, you stay here for, I don't know.
What happens if you can't get the money? What will they do to you?
They die. If they don't have the money, they...
So that's what they're dealing with here. Now, you said a system.
That's what we're dealing with.
So you say it's like $11,000 to come to America. They don't have the money, so they give a little bit down. And then what happens once they get here?
Oh, so if they don't have the money to pay back, what they do is they basically go into servitude. That's when you find out, like, that ICE or the DEA or Border Patrol finds a home filled with migrants being held almost in servitude here in the United States. Some of the younger people, the women, end up as sexual slaves. This is a humanitarian crisis, and these drug cartels are taking advantage of our laws, which perpetuate this incredibly horrible behavior that allows these cartels to amass millions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. Because remember, they're not only involved in human trafficking, but they're also moving narcotics into the United States. It's an incredibly dangerous situation. Guatemalan officials tell me, and I spoke to senior Guatemalan officials both in the defense ministry as well as in the intelligence ministry in Guatemala. They said they are working very closely with U.S. officials to try to rectify, but there's nothing they can do to stop the flow unless we both work together.
Real quick, Sarah, 20 seconds. Kevin McAleenan's going down there next week. What do you recommend he tell them?
Well, he has to demand that we work together, and if they don't work with us, then we have to withhold money. I mean, I think the most important thing here is that the defense industry, as well as the defense ministry in Guatemala and the United States, work together to try to stop the flow. If we invest money, we should invest it in security, we should invest it in training, and we should invest it in the areas that help both of our countries for national security and actually for the future, because what we're seeing now is a growing crisis that seems to be exacerbated by the drug cartels.
1% of their population is already here illegally.
That's
Unbelievable.
correct.
Sarah Carter, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead. She spent 21 years in prison before her drug sentence was commuted by President Trump. Thanks to some help from Kim Kardashian. But there are some things about Alice Johnson's story you've never heard before. She joins us live with how faith led her to freedom. Next.
Now it's time for your news by the numbers. First number is 16,000. That's how many pounds of steel came crashing down in just 15 seconds in Pennsylvania. Whoa. The 21-story tower used to be the home of Bethlehem Steel Corporation's headquarters. It was vacant for 12 years, and there she goes. Next, $57 million. That's how much John Wick 3 Parabellum raked in at the box office this weekend. The movie taking the top spot from Avengers, which had been #1 for 3 weeks. And finally, 75 years. That's the age of this bodybuilder getting ready for her first ever competition in Arizona. She's 75.
I feel really good. I look the best I've looked in my entire life. So I thought I should celebrate that. I should show it off.
Linda Thomas hopes her story will inspire others. Congratulations. All right, and that's some of the news. Ainsley?
Good for her. Yes, ma'am. I'm talking to Alice Johnson, my friend Alice Johnson. Her story has gripped the entire nation. Alice Marie Johnson spent 21 years in prison for nonviolent drug-related offenses and spent years campaigning and praying for her freedom. A petition to President Obama to commute her sentence, getting over 200,000 signatures. But it wasn't until 2018 that her freedom was granted by President Trump with the help of Kim Kardashian West. And Johnson now sharing her incredible story. There's the book right there. It's a new memoir. It's called Afterlife, My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom, and it is out tomorrow. It is such a great read. I highly recommend it. Alice Johnson is an ordained minister. She's a playwright and a great grandmother. She joins us now. So good to have you here.
So good to be here.
We reported on your story for so long, and now you are free. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is all, I know it's all the grace of God. That is the only reason that I'm sitting here today.
Yes,
but the reception that I've been receiving from the public has been amazing to me.
It's such a story of forgiveness, of redemption. Yesterday we did I sat down with you and your family and traveled down south to be with you and get to know you. I went to D.C. to sit down with Jared Kushner to talk about prison reform. And I've been so inspired by your story because it is, you prayed and prayed, you were such a strong Christian anyway, but behind bars, you really were a light to so many people that were going through tough times. How did you survive it in there, knowing you were in prison for the rest of your life, no parole?
Prison, I didn't allow prison to change who I was as a person. I did not let it get into me. And also, just looking around at so many other women who were hopeless, it made me feel and know that I had to do something.
How important is prison reform? Because when I sat down with you, you said something that was pretty shocking to me, and I don't even think it was included in the piece. I asked you how many good people are behind bars that you feel like have already served their time, but they're in prison for a lot longer than they should be. And you said 1/3. That's a big number.
Yes.
So how important is what President Trump is doing?
It is very, very important. My family, we've been reunited. There's so many families who are waiting for their loved ones to come home too. So for the president to embrace this issue is very important. It's important to society because when families are broken, you don't have a good, strong society. Communities are affected. When one person goes to prison, their family goes to prison with them, their communities are impacted, their children, the children of the women.
I know.
I've never heard a woman who said that her child didn't ask her, Mama, when are you coming home? What do you tell your children when you're serving these long, unnecessary sentences, when you no longer pose a risk to society? Why are you wasting tax dollars? Why are you keeping families separated when the retribution, when the price has already been paid? So these laws must change. They must.
You served 22 years.
Almost 22.
Almost 22.
21 years, 7 months and 6 days.
Yeah, and I'm so glad the president heard your plea, Kim Kardashian.
Yes.
You can read her whole story in the book. You can watch the special on Fox Nation. We spent an hour talking, and our producers put it together, an hour piece. It's wonderful. The book comes out tomorrow. It's called Afterlife. You can hear the story about how she met Kim Kardashian.
Yes.
How people on both sides of the aisle were fighting for you. You had the ACLU, you had Al Sharpton and President Trump and Kim Kardashian. This is a bipartisan issue, and both sides have come together. You can learn about her faith, how she was such an inspiration to all the people behind bars, learn about her family. She lost a child and how she got through that. It's just a wonderful book, and I love you. God bless you.
I love you too. And my book is not only for prisoners, about prison. It's a story of hope for all people, of hope and hanging on.
Your friends behind bars, they were chanting, cheering, so excited. Everyone who worked there was outside cheering you on as you ran across the street and you ran into the arms of your children, your family members, when they picked you up. And they all said, "Don't forget about us, Alice."
And
so you're fighting for them.
And I won't stop fighting for all the people who have been left behind, not only the women, but the men also.
All right, pick up the book. Make it a bestseller. Please help her. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you.
All right, starting today, American farmers can start doing business again with Canada and with Mexico after President Trump strikes a new deal. Stuart Varney says this is a big win and has the numbers to prove it. Coming up next.
I love the farmers. They voted for me. You look at the middle of this country, it's all red, meaning Republican, right? It's all, and it wasn't for other Republicans, but for me it was. And we have a great relationship.
So there you got the president sitting down with Steve Hilton. It ran last night. Joining us right now, sitting down with us, Stuart Varney, host of Varney and Company over on Fox Business. They were talking about how it was revealed at the conclusion of last work week that apparently regarding the tariffs against the farmers, Mexico, Canada, they've been lifted, and now what happens?
We'll start farm trade again. That's what's going on here. The president needs the political support of the Farm Belt. In all these trade wars and trade disputes, it's the farmers who've taken quite a hit so far. He needs to retain their political support. So we've got a couple of things going for him. Number one, we now start farm trade again, Mexico and Canada. That's what everybody wants.
Because they rescinded the tariffs, so the retaliatory tariffs come off too.
That's right. That's the detail, and that's exactly what's happening. Plus, there is $15 billion that we're going to collect from the tariffs placed on Chinese goods that will then be redistributed in some way to the Farm Belt.
How does that work?
Well,
everybody get a check?
The plan that I've heard is that we will use that $15 billion to buy the commodities, soybeans, for example, which the Chinese will not be buying, and then we give those commodities to the poor countries of the world, and that's how we balance out aid to the farmers. That's one tentative plan. Whether that's what works out in the end is another story. But the president is trying hard to maintain the political support of the Farm Belt, and he has to.
What about salaries? U.S. salaries, the average salary is going up.
It's going to be a great summer for wage earners and salaried people because we've got such a tight labor market. There are 1.3 million more jobs than unemployed people. So you've got to pay more to keep people and get new people coming in. Now, at the moment, wages are rising at around a 3.2% annual clip. By the summer, a lot of people are saying it'll be a 4% wage increase clip, which would be very nice.
So
in a generation.
It's just so interesting the way all the Democratic candidates keep taking shots at the president, unnecessary tax cut for the rich, which is not factually accurate. Kamala Harris weighed in on how the economy not working.
That's right.
Let's speak truth. America's economy is not working for working people.
I'm sorry, I just don't get that.
Because she's got to run against Trump and his economy.
Bring up something else.
She says part of the soundbite, which you didn't hear there, is that people have to have 2 or 3 jobs to
We've heard
make
that
it
before.
in
We keep
America.
hearing that.
Where do you get that from? I've not seen that statistic. I just haven't seen it. That is spin by the Democrats on the state of our economy. I think we've got a booming economy, and working people are making gains which they've not seen in a decade. I can't see how that translates into it's not working for working people. I don't get that.
Well, we have heard AOC talk about people have to have more than one job. AOC also one of the people pushing the Green New Deal. Tell us about what's going on with the Green New Deal in Australia.
Yeah, we don't spend much time on Australian elections now, do we? But this one, the one over this past weekend,
was a
is
stunner.
Very absolute stunner. The candidate who favoured taking climate change measures and taxing the rich, that candidate was supposed to win and lost.
And was winning in all the polls.
In all the polls and the exit polls.
Wait, you can't trust the polls?
Whoa. It was an exact copy of what happened here in 2016. The Liberal candidate was sure to win. The elite supported, the media supported, but Hillary lost. Same in Australia. Now, there's a message here for Democrats in 2020. The candidate in Australia who favoured climate change legislation and taxing the rich lost. That's exactly what presidential candidates on the Democrat side want to do.
I have an additional read. You want to use this in your show if you like it?
Go ahead.
Okay. My thing is, the polls were right. The people were not telling the truth to the polls because they don't want to be honest because they are looked down on by saying, I don't want to get rid of all oil and gas. A carbon tax would not be practical or affordable. So they keep their mouths shut and vote differently.
That's
Sound
right.
familiar? 2016?
Absolutely. 2016, written all over again. There's a guilt trip being played. You should feel guilty if you're not in favor of climate change legislation. You should feel guilty if you're not in favor of taxing the rich.
We interviewed a pro-life Democrat earlier in the show, and she said people have to come up to her and whisper, I'm pro-life too. I'm a Democrat and I'm pro-life, because it's not a message that you're supposed to talk about.
I'm telling you, Democrats should really watch out in 2020 because it's going to happen all over again. You think you're going to win with that message, but that's not the way people really.
But the president's message this time, though,
I will use your
economy.
point. Okay. You want to watch my show so you can prove that I'm going to
I absolutely do.
No radio for an hour.
Yes.
Watch his show.
Right. Do you good.
We're a nation of whisperers now.
It would do you good.
We whisper the truth. I will.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
All right, 21 minutes before the top of the hour, and Jillian joins us with some news from Colorado.
That's right. Good morning. Let's talk about this. A Columbine survivor shot during the 1999 massacre is found dead in his home. The family of 37-year-old Austin Eubanks suggesting he died as a result of drug addiction. Eubanks had become a vocal advocate in the war on drugs, often speaking about overcoming his own addiction. An official cause of death has not yet been released. Chicago's first case of the measles was just confirmed. The infected person reportedly traveled to several countries experiencing outbreaks. Meanwhile, New Hampshire officials announced the state's second case, a young child now recovering in the hospital. According to the CDC, measles has been reported in 23 states so far this year. A patriotic business is gaining support as it refuses to take down a giant American flag. Camping World claims it's being sued by the city of Statesville, North Carolina, for flying the 40 by 80 flag, which the city says is too big. Camping World says they fly the flag to support our vets and military, and they won't take it down despite $11,000 in fines. A petition to keep the flag has more than 7,800 signatures. Does 2020 hopeful Elizabeth Warren want to be the commander-in-chief or matchmaker-in-chief? Check this out. Comedian Ashley Nicole Black tweeting the Democrat, quote, do you think Elizabeth Warren has a plan to fix my love life? And Warren then responding, quote, direct message me and let's figure this out. People on Twitter absolutely loving it. One person tweeting, Warren 2020, a matchmaker made in heaven. Another writes, quote, fix mine too, please. Thanks. That's I saw this going around yesterday and I was cracking up at some of the responses.
That is hilarious. Let's see what happens.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
thank you
Jillian.
very much. All right, let's go out on the streets of New York City where it's beautiful here, but the Midwest is keeping an eye on the sky.
Absolutely. Let's go to it right away because we have the potential for long track, potentially deadly tornadoes. Severe weather outbreak underway across the Plain States. We had dozens of reports of severe weather, including tornadoes over the last 72 hours. A rare high-risk area. This is a big deal across portions of Texas and Oklahoma. We are going to see watches and warnings warnings and potentially deadly weather. So people need to be on alert, know what to do if there's a watch or a warning. You need to be in your basements or your cellars, the safest place to be. Stay away from windows for potentially flying debris, and keep your NOAA weather radio on overnight. Okay, we're going to be talking about severe weather. Real quick, guys, thank you. Houston loves JD. That's awesome. And Palm Beach, thank you so much for coming. Wave to Steve Ainsley and Brian, my friends. Thank you for coming today. Mwah. We love you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Big hugs.
All right. Meanwhile, a city-state split, the new movement to kick Chicago out of the state of Illinois.
But leave the Cubs. One of the lawmakers leading the charge joins us live next.
And the pizza.
Yes.
Aw, thank you. Good morning to you. Welcome back. You're welcome, whoever that was. Charging stations for electric cars could soon be irrelevant. Scientists in Sweden are developing the first ever electric road that will charge cars as they drive. A 1 kilometer section of the road is expected to open next year. Fascinating. And from the roads to the rails, Japan is testing a new bullet train that can go nearly 250 miles per hour. That's about 50 miles per hour faster than the country's current bullet train. Officials hope it will be able to compete with some airplane trips within the country. The high-speed service won't be available, though, until 2030. But pretty cool. Steve.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, turning to mounting calls from Republicans in the state of Illinois to sweep the Windy City right out of Illinois altogether. A new resolution calling to make Chicago the 51st state of the United States. One of its co-sponsors, Republican State Representative Brad Halbrook, joins us right now live from Chicago. Brad, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so what's the idea behind this?
Yeah, the idea behind it is to separate Illinois from Chicago. It's laid out in the U.S. Constitution under Article 4, Section 3. It's a pathway forward. It's about a 6-step process to get it done. It's been done 4 times in the past. The most recent history would be from West Virginia, Virginia.
Why do you want to lop Chicago off from the rest of the state?
Yeah, the majority of the legislators in the General Assembly come from one county, and they seem to have a fair amount of issues, and so they are mandating different things on the rest of the state to fix their issues in the state of Illinois or in Chicago, and we're not having those issues like they are up here,
right.
And so it's just one thing after another.
Kind of a similar situation to, I'm sitting in New York State right now, but I'm sitting in New York, which, you know, a lot of the energy and resources of the state are harnessed right here in New York City. So you're essentially saying the same thing, right?
Right. I mean, there's a growing movement across the United States. It's happening in New York, it's happening in California, Washington, Oregon, and many other states where you have these large population centers. The rural portions are not being equally represented. Illinois is a case in point. You know, the U.S. Constitution, right. Under Article 4, Section 4, gives us the guarantee that we are to have a small R Republican form of government. Mm-hmm. It's simply not working in the state of Illinois.
If it happened, if you were able to convince the people that this is a good idea and it passed, well, ultimately, what is your goal?
Yeah, the goal is to form a new Illinois that stops the piling on of debt, the piling on of unfunded pension liability, that starts to turn the state around, does away with the restrictive mandates on our local units of government, the restrictive mandates on our business, and allows people to grow and raise a family and do business, have a thriving economy in the rest of the state of Illinois.
Well, the one thing Illinois needs to turn around is the number of people who are leaving Illinois. You know, the exodus rate is substantial.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're losing one person every 4.5 minutes. You know, we're losing the town the size of Peoria every year. We already have lost, or will lose by the 2020 census, 1 congressional district and potentially 2. And so we've got to do something to turn that around. Employers are not expanding, or they're choosing not to locate in the state of Illinois, and thus people are leaving the state of Illinois for opportunity elsewhere.
Well, let's see what happens out there. State Representative Brad Halbrook, Republican from Illinois. Sir, thank you very much.